Welcome my fellow humans. This video will be my own list of 5 messed up Bible stories. Stick around to the end of the video to see some honorable mentions. But before we begin, here's a few that didn't make it on the list. The story of Job, the Tower of Babel, the fall of humanity. Those are just a few of the many that didn't make it on the list. So the main list I'll be talking about here today is number 5, Moses being killed by God for not talking to a rock. Long story short, during the tail end of the 40-year journey to the Promised Land, while the Jews were wandering around hungry and starving, according to Numbers, Moses was told to speak to the rock in a desert to bring forth water for the Israelites. In frustration of the people of God, Moses chose to strike the rock twice instead of speaking to it. Moses, according to the Bible, died on Mount Nebo at the age of 120, within sight of the Promised Land. The next on my top 5 list is number 4, Jephthah the judge sacrificing his own daughter to God for winning a battle. Jephthah was a man from and fathered by Gilead, who had led the Israelites in battle many, many times. And in one particular case against Ammon, in exchange for defeating the Ammonites, Jephthah made a vow to God that he'll sacrifice whatever would come out of the door of his house first. Whatever would come out of his house first to greet him. When he returned home, the very first living thing to greet him was his young virgin daughter. When he told her about his vow to God, she agreed to do the sacrifice, but on the condition that she could spend 2 months with her friends to have some fun. Instead of doing the smart thing and never coming back, she eventually returned back after the 2 months were up, and Jephthah took her to an altar. Then he ritualistically stabbed her until she passed away, like a loving father should. Number 3, Lot's daughters drugging and sexually assaulting Lot, getting themselves pregnant after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which I'll talk more about shortly, Lot and his 2 daughters had found shelter in a cave, and one night, both of his daughters planned to get Lot drunk. And well, Lot ends up fathering kids with his daughters. Speaking of which, bonus. Lot offering up his daughters to the town folks to be sexually assaulted instead of the angels. That's a bonus. Before the whole destruction of his hometown and the assaultation of his wife by the all-loving God, the townfolk had gathered around Lot's home because they wanted to know the new visitors. The new visitors Lot had offered hospitality to, and he refused them, and instead, Lot offered his virgin daughters to the townsfolk for them to do as they pleased, which thankfully, they refused. Maybe that's why the daughters took revenge on Lot by getting pregnant by their own father. Oh God! Number 2, God kills a guy who tried to save the Ark of the Covenant from falling onto the ground. This man was trying to protect the Ark, and God killed him instantly for doing his job and duty. That's fucked up. That's messed up. What excuses people will use for this immoral, evil act by God. Anyway, honorable mention. Paul befriending a runaway slave. What's a slave? Well, basically, a slave is being someone else's property. That's pretty much it. It's being somebody else's property for life. You can be passed on to their children. You can even be beaten to death. And it's okay because you're their property. You can be sold to other people. You can be passed down onto your children. And you're forced to do everything the owner says. Why do I bring this up? Well, because Paul, formerly Saul, finds out about his best friend being a runaway slave. And you know, my man Paul, he doesn't do the logical thing. Instead of letting his friend stay with him and help him out, this man, he instead writes a letter to his buddy's former slave owner, asking to let his friend stop being enslaved, and he sends his slave friend back to his former slave owner he ran away from, with money to try and buy his friend's freedom. If you are in a situation and were the runaway slave, what would be on your mind when your best friend forces you to go back to your former master with money for their potential release of you? What would you do in this situation? I'm asking my audience here. Would you be thinking Paul was a huge dick? Would you try to run away with the money? Let me know down in the comments, because I'd fucking run away. I'm not holding my language back, I'd fucking run away. Weirdly, the slave did abide by what Paul asked, but it's still messed up. The slave owner didn't have to agree. He could have kept the money. He could have kept the money and the slave. And for some reason, many people like to say the story proves Jesus hates slavery. How the fuck does that make sense? It doesn't make a lick of sense. Paul isn't Jesus, nor Jesus is Paul. Paul has no authority over what Jesus does or says, and anything Paul says is in no relation to Jesus. And I say that because if that's how Jesus proved slavery is wrong, I don't ever want him helping me out with anything. Wouldn't it make more sense for Jesus to say, slaves, run away from your masters, especially the cruel ones? I think so. Or that the God of the Old Testament says not to own slaves and no slave owner shall enter the kingdom of God? Why didn't he say that? But no, throughout the whole Bible, it's the exact opposite. And it gives instructions and has a hierarchy of slaves and servants and laws about how badly you're allowed to treat your servants and slaves, and how you can trick your servants into being your human property that's permanent property forever. There are verses in the Bible which teach that shit. And people like to downplay that type of slavery, like with American chattel slavery, which was more or less taken directly from the Bible and its rules on slavery. And according to this honorable mention, Paul says slaves must obey their masters, especially the cruel ones. Hey. And last but not least, number 1. You'll never get this. A tie between God making the Israelite soldiers massacre every living creature in a specific town, and Noah's flood. You know, the story of Noah's Ark. 1a. God orders soldiers to go into several towns, usually telling them that they should just kill the men of fighting age and keep everyone else for themselves, do as they please. That's usually what happens throughout much of the Old Testament. Taking the kids as slaves, taking the virgin women as sex slaves. But for the cities of the Canaanite God, Yahweh ordered his soldiers to also kill any pregnant women, cutting up the pregnant women's bellies and ripping out the babies and bashing those babies onto stones while being happy. You must be happy while you bash those babies' heads into stones, and it's literally right there in the fucking book. And B, the story of Noah's Ark. You know, the story where God tells Noah to build an ark and somehow bring 2 of each animal and 7 of each certain kinds for certain ritualistic reasons, because he's going to flood the whole world. And of course he does so, killing all life on the planet except for a small amount of people on a boat and some animals. Impossibly. My only question about the Noah's Ark story is this: what happened to the fish? Saltwater fish and freshwater fish, just one example, can't exactly mix well, and fish can't live on a wooden boat for 40 plus days. How did all the fish survive? I can understand bears, the humans, the birds, and the insects, but the fish, guys. The fish. And I don't even like fish. And I'm curious about the fish. Anyway, thanks for watching the video all the way till the end. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, make sure you hit that notification bell, leave a comment down below, tell me your thoughts of this video, any messed up Bible stories that you have in mind, or any messed up stories in general. You let me know. Oh, I also have a Patreon, which you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. The link will be in the description box below. And there's also going to be a special link in the description box below about this. This is a shirt I'm selling on Redbubble. Link is in the description. See you all later, my fellow humans. Bye.